The email came at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, while I was still in my pajamas, holding a mug of coffee that hadn't even finished brewing. I almost didn't open it. The subject line said urgent. Account delinquency notice action required, and my first instinct was to mark it as spam. I got those kinds of emails sometimes, fake ones, phishing attempts, the usual digital noise of modern life. But something made me stop. The sender wasn't a random string of letters, it was a name I recognized. A real bank. A bank I had never opened an account with. I set my mug down on the kitchen counter. I read the email 3 times before any of the words actually landed. Dear Miss Sarah Calloway, this is a formal notice regarding account number ending in 4471. Your account is currently 47 days past due. The outstanding balance is $84,390. Failure to respond within 15 business days may result in further collection action and damage to your credit profile. I stood there in my apartment, my 1-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building in Columbus, Ohio. The same apartment I had lived in for 3 years, the same address on my driver's license, my tax returns, every single piece of official mail I had ever received, and I felt the floor tilt underneath me. $84,000. I didn't own a single credit card from that bank. I had never applied for one. I had never even walked into one of their branches. My hands were shaking when I opened my laptop and pulled up my credit report. What I saw made me sit down on the floor. There were 3 credit cards listed under my name and social security number that I had never seen before in my life. The oldest one had been opened 2 years ago. 2 years. All 3 were maxed out. Together, they totaled just over $84,000 in debt, and every single one of them was marked delinquent. For a full minute, I just sat there on the cold floor of my kitchen in my pajamas, staring at the screen, trying to make my brain catch up to what my eyes were reading. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some old reflex I hadn't managed to unlearn yet made me answer. "Sarah, honey," she said, and her voice had that particular texture it always got when she was about to ask me for something. Warm but careful, soft around the edges. "How are you doing, sweetheart? I was just thinking about you." I looked at my laptop screen. I looked at 3 credit cards in my name that I had never touched. "I'm fine," I said. My voice came out completely flat. Good. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. It's about your brother." Of course it was. My brother Daniel is 31 years old. He has never held a job for longer than 8 months. He has never paid a bill on time in his life. He once borrowed $2,000 from me to cover his rent and told me he'd pay me back by Christmas, and that was 4 Christmases ago. My mother calls him free-spirited. My father calls him still finding himself. I had spent most of my adult life calling him whatever version of those words I could force myself to believe, because believing the truth about your own brother is one of the hardest things a person can do. "What about him?" I said. "Well, he's going through a little rough patch right now. You know how it is with him, he's so sensitive, and the job market is just so difficult." "Mom," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." A pause. That particular kind of pause that isn't silence, it's the sound of someone deciding how much to say. "Of course, honey. What is it?" I kept my voice very even. I had learned a long time ago that evenness was armor. "Do you know anything about credit card accounts opened in my name?" The pause this time was longer. "Sarah, do you know anything about 3 credit cards opened under my social security number, totaling over $84,000 in debt?" "Honey, I can explain." And there it was. 3 words. 3 words that confirmed everything. Not "what are you talking about?" Not "that's impossible." Not even "let me check with your father," just "I can explain." I closed my laptop. I had to put the phone down on the counter for a moment because my hand was shaking too hard to hold it. I took 1 breath. Then another. Then I picked it back up. "Then explain," I said. What came out of my mother's mouth over the next 10 minutes was one of the most breathtaking things I had ever heard. Not because it was complicated, Because it was so simple. Because it was so matter of fact. Because she spoke about it the way you'd talk about borrowing a cup of sugar from a neighbor. 2 years ago, my brother had gotten into financial trouble. More trouble than usual. He owed money to people, she said, and she used that phrase people in a way that made my stomach drop. He needed a fresh start. He needed cards and a name with a clean credit history. My name had a clean credit history because I had spent 10 years building it carefully, paying every bill on time, never carrying a balance I couldn't clear. So my mother had helped him. She had helped him gather the information he needed. She had helped him fill out the applications. She said my father hadn't known at first, but once he found out, they'd both agreed that it was the right thing to do. That family takes care of family. That I was the responsible one, the successful one, the one who had always figured things out. That Daniel needed help and I was in a position to give it, even if I didn't know I was giving it. You stole my identity, I said. Sarah. That's a very dramatic way too. You stole my identity and gave it to my brother so he could open credit cards and spend $84,000, and you didn't tell me. We were going to tell you. Daniel was going to pay it back. He didn't pay it back. He didn't pay any of it back. The accounts are delinquent. I'm being contacted by collectors. My credit score. I pulled the laptop back open and looked at the number at the top of the page and felt something cold move through me. My credit score dropped 112 points. Sarah, if you would just listen. I am listening. I have been listening. I need you to listen now. I stood up from the floor. I walked to the window. The street below was bright and ordinary and full of people going to work, buying coffee, living their lives without $84,000 in fraudulent debt in their names. I need you to understand what you did. This isn't a family favor. This is a federal crime. My mother made it sound like I had said something hurtful. Like I was the one causing harm. You always make everything so serious, she said. Mom, this is serious. Daniel is family. You're his sister. You have a good job. You're stable. You could help him. You should want to help him. It's not like we asked you to do something impossible. It's not like we. You didn't ask me, I said. That's the whole point. You never asked me. She was quiet. I have to go, I said. I hung up. Then I stood at my window for a long time, watching the street, breathing slowly, letting the shock work its way through me like a toxin that needed to pass. Because I knew even standing there, even in that first terrible hour, that what I did next had to be careful. It had to be right. I couldn't afford to act out of anger. Anger was a luxury. What I needed was a plan. The first call I made was not to my brother. It was not to my father. It was to the bank. I told the fraud specialist exactly what had happened. I told her the accounts had been opened without my knowledge or consent. I told her I had never applied for these cards, never received them, never activated them, never used them. I told her I had reason to believe I knew who had opened them, and that I was prepared to cooperate fully with any investigation. She took everything down. She was professional and calm, and she did not make me feel like I was being dramatic. She told me the accounts would be flagged pending investigation, that my liability would likely be reduced or eliminated if the fraud was confirmed, and that I should file a report with the FTC and my local police department as soon as possible. I thanked her. I wrote down her name and the reference number for my case. I wrote down the time and date of the call. Then I opened a document on my laptop and started writing everything down. The email, the credit report, the phone call with my mother. Every word I could remember. Every date, every number, everything that had been said. I wrote it all down while it was still fresh, while the details were still sharp, because I knew from everything I had ever read and learned about situations like this that documentation was everything. That memory fades. That feelings don't hold up in court, but records do. I pulled up every email my mother had ever sent me. I searched my inbox for my brother's name. I found something I hadn't thought about in 2 years, an email from Daniel, sent on a rainy Sunday, asking me if he could borrow some personal information for a financial thing and telling me not to worry. It was just paperwork. I had been busy that week. I had read it quickly and sent back a confused one-line reply asking him to explain more. He never had. I had forgotten about it entirely. I screenshot that email. I saved it in a folder I labeled simply evidence. My phone rang. My brother. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I let it go again. Then he sent a text. Sarah, come on, just talk to me. Mom called me. Let me explain. I screenshot the text. Then I silenced my phone and went back to my documentation. The police report took most of the afternoon. The officer who took my statement was a woman named Reyes, and she had the particular kind of stillness that people develop when they've heard too many stories they can't unhear. She listened to everything I said without interrupting. When I was done, she asked a few careful questions. She told me that identity theft by a family member was more common than people realized, and that the fact that I had a record of my brother asking about my personal information would be significant. What happens to them? I asked. Officer Reyes looked at me directly. That depends on what the investigation finds. But identity theft is a federal crime. If there's evidence that the accounts were opened fraudulently using your information, the people responsible could face charges. I nodded. Are you prepared for that possibility? She asked. Not unkindly, just honestly. I thought about my mother's voice on the phone that morning. You always make everything so serious. I thought about 4 Christmases without my $2,000. I thought about 112 points disappearing from a credit score I had spent a decade building one careful payment at a time. I thought about 2 years of debt accumulating in my name while I went to work every day and paid my bills and had absolutely no idea. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. When I got home, there were 11 missed calls on my phone. My mother, my father, my brother, and then my mother again, 3 more times in a row. I sat at my kitchen table and I listened to every single voicemail. My brother's first voicemail was apologetic. He was sorry. He hadn't meant for it to get out of hand. He was going to fix it. He just needed a little more time. He needed me to hold off on doing anything drastic. He used the word drastic the way people use it when they mean anything that has consequences for me. My father's voicemail was harder to listen to. His voice was lower, more controlled, but what he said underneath the control was unmistakable. He said I needed to think about what I was doing to this family. He said some things had to stay inside the family. He said that going to banks and police was something people did to strangers, not to their own blood. He said he was disappointed in me. I sat with that for a minute. My father's disappointment had been one of the most powerful forces of my childhood. It had shaped me in ways I was still discovering. Even now, hearing it in a voicemail, I felt it land somewhere tender. But I also thought about something Officer Reyes had said. You didn't create this situation. You're responding to it. I deleted my father's voicemail. Then I went back and saved my brother's, because despite its tone, it was effectively an admission. He was sorry. He hadn't meant for it to get out of hand. He was going to fix it. In legal terms, those 3 sentences were worth quite a lot. My mother's last voicemail, the one she left at 9:47 that night, was different from the others. Her voice was quieter, tighter. Like something had shifted between the afternoon and the evening, like someone had explained something to her that changed her understanding of the situation. Sarah, she said, I don't want things to go further than they already have. I think we need to sit down as a family and figure this out together. Your brother made mistakes. We all made mistakes. But you're about to do something that can't be undone. I'm asking you as your mother, I'm asking you please don't do this to us. I listened to it twice. Then I saved it to my evidence folder. The next few weeks moved the way weeks do when you're in the middle of something that hasn't resolved yet, slowly in the day, fast in retrospect. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I filed the FTC report. I met with a consumer attorney who specialized in identity theft and fraud cases, a woman named Patricia who had the kind of efficient warmth that made you feel like things were going to be okay, not because she was reassuring you, but because she was already 10 steps ahead, planning for it. She reviewed everything I had brought, the emails, the voicemails, the text from my brother, the police report number, the credit report, and she looked up at me over her reading glasses and said, "You did everything right. You documented everything immediately. That matters enormously." I thought about what might have happened if I hadn't. If I had just called my brother back. If I had let my mother explain. If I had sat down at that family meeting and let them talk me into staying quiet, giving it more time, trusting Daniel to handle it, and found myself a year from now with the same debt, the same ruined credit, and no record of any of it. I thought about how close I had come to doing exactly that. Because they were my family. Because the word family has weight. Because I had spent 30 years learning to carry that weight without questioning whether I should. The bank's investigation concluded 6 weeks after my initial report. The findings confirmed that the accounts had been opened fraudulently. My liability was removed entirely. All 3 accounts were closed, the delinquency marks were retracted, and the bank filed their own report with law enforcement, which joined the file that had been started by Officer Reyes. My credit score began to recover. Slowly. 1 month at a time. But moving in the right direction. My brother retained a criminal defense attorney. This I found out not from him but from my mother, who called me one afternoon and said it in a voice designed to make me feel guilty for making it necessary. I listened to her talk. I didn't say much. When she finished, I told her I hoped Daniel had a good attorney and that I was done discussing it. "You're being so cold," she said. "This isn't who you are." "This is exactly who I am," I said. "This is who I became because you raised me to work hard and be responsible and handle my own affairs. I'm doing all 3 of those things right now." She didn't have an answer for that. My father called once more, a few weeks after that. He didn't apologize. He never apologized. It wasn't something he was built for. But he said something I didn't expect. He said, "I know we put you in an impossible position." Just that. No, but after it. No qualification. He said it, and then there was a long silence, and then he said he'd let me go, and he hung up. I sat with that for a while. It wasn't enough, but it was something. There are things I know now that I didn't know 2 years ago, and I think about them a lot. Not because I'm still angry, though sometimes I am, but because I think they're worth knowing if you haven't had to learn them yet. I know that freezing your credit costs nothing and takes less than an hour and protects you from exactly what happened to me. I know you can do it right now, today, before anything bad has happened, and then unfreeze it temporarily if you ever need to apply for something. I know that your social security number is not something family members are entitled to, no matter how the request is framed, no matter how soft the voice asking for it. I know that love and exploitation can live in the same relationship for a very long time without anyone naming the second one for what it is. I know that naming it doesn't mean you stop loving the people. It means you stop letting the love be a reason to accept harm. I know that documentation is not cold. It's not calculated. It is simply the act of taking your own experience seriously enough to record it. I know that the moment you say this is serious and someone responds by telling you you're being dramatic, you're getting a piece of information about that person that you should hold carefully and not discard. The legal process is still ongoing as I speak to you. I won't tell you how it ends because I don't know yet. What I can tell you is that my credit score is back in the good range. What I can tell you is that I have been sleeping better than I have in years, which surprised me. I had expected the guilt to be heavier, the weight of having reported my own family. What I found instead was something lighter. Not relief, exactly. Something closer to alignment. Like I had finally stopped carrying something that was never mine to carry. The last text I got from my brother came on a Sunday evening, about 2 months after everything began. It said, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I read it. I thought about it for a moment. I thought about the $84,000. I thought about 2 years. I thought about 112 points. I thought about a Tuesday morning in my pajamas on the kitchen floor. Then I screenshot the text, saved it to my evidence folder, and blocked his number. And I thought, yes, actually. In this specific instance, for the first time in a long time, yes, I am.